And again, maybe my taste, I don't have sophisticated enough taste to be able to recognize that, it's art. But as you're saying, it's a cup.
Yeah, I mean, trophies come in different forms, right? The Euro looks different to the Bundesliga title, which looks different to the Serie A or the Liga title. The Prem title too.
Because the Bundesliga you played.
You played, yeah. It's like, they all look different, right? And they all have their different, their different tastes and stuff, but...
We are the champions, my friend. We are the champions. Amachita Sevenzil. Chuck, I'm so happy. I'm so happy.
And the sun has finally come to shine back on us. Says, but now, like AFCON success, under 17s, the under 20s crowned it off because they've got the actual title. They've qualified for the World Cup like the others have. Well, Bafana almost there, but they've got a title to their name, like the best under 20s in Africa. So that's amazing, boy. That's amazing.
And we start there, right? No need to beat around the bush. My name is Jay. That is Chuck. And Chuck, as we already in it, Amachita, South African under 20s crowned champions of Africa, beating Morocco. We were in the final in 1997 against Morocco. Nabo Peni, Nabo Stiga, Nabo Matthew Booth. We lost in that final, but revenge tastes so sweet. 28 years later, we have been crowned the under 20 African champions. How you feeling? What's your reaction to that?
Man, I wish I was tuned into all the games, because this is one of via highlights. This is you tuned in via YouTube for a delay. That's a good thing about YouTube, right? You can always track back to the start of the game and then run it back till where it's live. But it was a varying display, right? Because there's games against Egypt where we lost that one against Egypt. That was our opening game, if I'm not mistaken.
We won
that one.
Yeah.
Who did we lose to? We lost to Burkina.
We lost our second game, and then went on to win against
the last two. Zambia, the last two.
Yes, I think it was Burkina Faso.
Yeah, could be there. So it was a mixed bag to begin with, right? But once we got to like game number 3, because before I even go there, why did our group have 5 teams and the rest had 4?
I think the numbers of the teams that qualified. I'm not certain why we ended up with 5. Actually, must. Maybe look that up to verify, but yeah, that's the situation we found ourselves in.
But I think once we were headed to the penultimate game of the group phase, we were favorites to qualify, and we handled that one quite well. And then there's Nigeria, we beat them, and then obviously in the final there's Morocco. What I will say, Jay, is something that we've been saying for a long time, right? But now we can prove that with silverware, we can prove that with qualification to AFCONs and to World Cups. We've got a bunch of talented youngsters. My favorite from the campaign was Ulangalihle Pili. I just think he's a player I like to watch, because we tend to lament in terms of wingers these days tend to cut in, pass back, they don't take on their man. Wasn't successful all the time, but it was very interesting and exciting to watch. And then on the other side is also April as well, right? Has a similar tools.
That's my dude.
That's your favorite,
that's
right?
My dude.
But all in all, Jay, the team was well balanced. I mean, in the final, we weren't necessarily the team that dominated the encounter, but we were very, very well disciplined. We were defensively disciplined. That's what I want to say. The keeper, Ulo, surprisingly composed for his age, Jay, because he doesn't just jump and react to everything. He's well positioned. He marshals his defense quite well. I think that's a lot of maturity on his head at that point in time. Then there's Smith, who stands out, right, because he's lanky, he's tall, he's got that curly hair, always there for 50-50 duels, always there fighting for the ball. But players like Abo Makuche and Abo Rapu, who show their experience, who show their talent as well, in the heart of the midfield, or rather Rapu going up and down and doing whatever he pleases. Those were a good watch those were a good watch, sorry. So all in all, Jay, what I'd say about the under 20 is that it was a mixed bag, but we handled all teams, like whether it's the physical side, whether it's the speedy side, whether it's teams who played in crosses and long balls. We had it all to deal with all kinds of comers on the tournament, or rather on the day. So for me, Jay, I'm surprised, to be honest, because I knew a few names. I knew Rapu, I knew Upili, I knew Vilagazi, not much else. But when you get to see who the other teammates are and what they bring to the party, you're surprised and you're happy about that. I wished Umfundo Vilagazi would have brought that magic from the Phillies games to some of his cameos against the Chiefs to the tournament, because I think he had times where he shone, but compared to his peers, and I don't want to compare because they're all champions at that point in time, but I just think to myself, with his potential and what he could bring to the party, if only, but good thing that the team is good enough that if he doesn't shine, there's players all over the park, literally all over the pitch, to shine and do the work. Case in point, Uhomulimo Kekana with that banger late on in the game. So Jay, I'm happy, I'm ecstatic. I'm just waiting to see where these boys play, what happens of them, because we've got like a Chandra Campbell, right, already in Belgium. I wonder where these boys will end up and which teams they'll play for. But so far, so excited, man.
The golden generation, and what you are then hoping to see is continuity into the under 23s ahead of the qualifiers, and hopefully to qualify for the Olympics in LA in 2028, and then into the Bafana structures, right? And I want to single out a man by the name of Walter Steenbok, Chuck, who was the technical director at SAFA, recently parted ways with SAFA because he got accusations of insubordination and not or violating the statutes of SAFA. And that leaves a bitter taste in my mouth because it feels as though somebody who is working is not tolerated at SAFA. Instead, most recently we heard breaking news that the president of SAFA got an illegitimate payment of 10 million rand. And Steenbok, Chuck, as a technical director, he's the one who appointed this technical team, both of the under-20s and the under-17s. And one of the agendas that he put into motion was to develop a style of play. I mean, last year there was a coaching symposium around methodology. And the reason I even bring that up is because when you watch the under-20s, which I hadn't watched the under-20s when they were going through the COSAFA qualifiers for the AFCON, which they did brilliantly in. And I hadn't seen the under-17s much as well until I saw them at the under-17 AFCON. But you watch the under-17s, you watch the under-20s, they play just like Bafana. You remember what we were saying, and not just what we were saying, but this is what was coming out from the tournament and other teams and other media outlets from other countries around the continent, that there is a very defined style of play the Bafana are playing. This was exactly, Chuck, the kind of messaging that was coming out now as well from this under-20 World Cup, that the technical experts out at the tournament, they were raving about the methodology, the style of play of the under-20s. And that it was the brainchild of somebody like a Walter Steenbok, who previously had been I think a scout, a chief scout for Sundowns, as well as Kaizer Chiefs, double masters, somebody who's been to England, and someone who really took it upon himself to build out the national agenda, where even someone like Raymond Mtaga, the coach of the under-20s, his sole job is to coach the under-20s. And it's something that reminded me of what happened with England when they were not. Did they qualify for the 2014 World Cup?
Yeah, they did.
They were knocked out early in that one. Then they didn't qualify for the 2016 Euros. And they had the project, I think was it 2022, where they were going to realign and just knuckle down in terms of the development teams and feeding into the national team. And then you saw the under-17s win the World Cup for England, and you've seen the under-21s as well do well in the Euros, and you've seen, of course, England go to World Cup semi-finals and Euro finals, because there was an agenda that was put into motion, and they followed through on that. And you see the players you see successful in the England senior national team are guys who've been successful at the national ages, right? And this is what you had a Walter Steenbok do, and these are the results. Now that he's gone, I really hope, and seemingly Malefinsek is going to take over as a technical director, I hope that continues, because we cannot have a situation whereby we're finally finding success. The thing that we feel as South African fans, that we are a footballing nation and we need to be towards or at the top of African football. And now we've spoken about in that way. If you look at the landscape, Chuck, from the senior team to the under-17s to the under-20s, even on the women's side, it's Morocco, it's South Africa, it's Egypt. And maybe you can sneak in a Nigeria there. And there's a rivalry happening at the top, right? I mean, you think about the under-17s. We were knocked out by Morocco. They went on to win the championship. In this one, we met Morocco in the final. We win the championship. So we are right there. We are right there, Chuck. And what you are absolutely hoping for is that the administrators do not mess this up for us, because there is an unprecedented length of success that is staring us in the face if we just handle it properly. In terms of the final, in terms of the boys winning, congratulations to them. It was brilliant, and what we see is what I'm talking about, that it came from meticulous planning, and this is what you get, right? Clearly the talent is there. And Raymond Mtaga, the way that he handled this team, he didn't have Mbogaz, right? He didn't have Chandra Campbell, who were big players for him in qualifying for this AFCON under 20s. And you have Mfundo Vilakazi, big name from a big team, Kaizer Chiefs, but he can say that maybe you're not quite the guy, go in a different direction. You mentioned Pili. Pili wasn't playing latterly, and he was able to sit him. And there was the matter of even Utiwani, the captain who plays for Sundowns. He went down in the first game, but then they rallied. Think about a Sundowns player as well, like Ulitlaku, another big name, right? But the coach looked at his team and could make the decision that gonna go in a different direction. Was not overawed by the fact that big names from big teams, and that's what we're just gonna go with. But because he knows these players and he's been with them for a period of almost 2 years now, or just over 2 years, he was well placed to marshal them to this title. And it's a big day. It's a big moment in South African football, and you just hope that it continues. And I got a warning: AFCON, December 2025, January 2026. You see what our youngsters are doing. Wait for our senior boys as well. And the WAFCON, of course, is also coming up where we are defending champions. It's just a good time to be a South African football fan.
Not a good time. I mean, Jay, what you speak of in terms of the structures and the style of play, that's something that Hugo Perez came in and addressed, or rather was asking questions about in terms of why are the Bafana players so old? Why do they play like this and that? And yes, we want to say that the bulk of the players that we took to AFCON were Sundowns players, and we benefited from them having that cohesion and that quality, right? But now when you look down below them, under 20s, under 17s, what you're talking about is that there's a structure that then says, these guys aren't necessarily from Sundowns, but they can play football and they can play well together. Now, Jay, now that translates to what we want to see, because you don't have it to be a flash in the pan. Post Hugo Perez, post this generation of Bafana players, that is quiet again. So because we've got a defined style of play and we've got the taste of winning as well, which I think is very important, because you want to build players who have tasted success, who have won together, and then you bring them up together in the 23s, in the senior national team as well. That I think is very important, Jay. So we started on a good footing at this point in time. And speaking of Sundowns, Jay, they also won their league title, right? The cup, that's not sure. Before I touch you, what do you feel about?
Not too sure.
What does that look like?
I don't like it. I don't like it. And you know what? I've been accused as well of maybe not having vision. Yeah. Where I'm stuck in the ways where I want to see like a Metro Trophy. Yeah. I want to see handles. I want to see you be able to hold it and do this with it. And maybe and maybe I'm a traditionalist like that. And I'm open to some people saying maybe like I'm short sighted, but I don't like it. Like there's a tree, then there are players, and I think. The idea, I get the idea, but like they could have done so like much better. I think it could have been a better design. It more looks like an award, and in an industry like art, for example, it is very artistic. I'll give you that. And again, maybe my taste, I don't have sophisticated enough taste to be able to recognize that like it's art. But as you're saying, Axicap, man.
Yeah, I mean. Trophies come in different forms, right? The Euro looks different to the Bundesliga title, which looks different to the Serie A or the Liga title, the Prem title too.
Because the Bundesliga he
played, yeah. It's like they all look different, right? And they all have their different, their different tastes and stuff. But if you put all those things next to each other, the one that stands out, is the odd one out, is this title that Mamelodi Sundowns won. Because after all that waiting, Jay, it's
anticlimactic. Chuck. On top of like you have all of that, and you've got those guys like standing on the top, like big baller there, and maybe you can it can be crested by a Protea or something like that. But as it is, I'm not a fan of it. I'm not a fan of it. My position has always been bring back that Absa Premiership Cup and just rebrand it
once, because I mean it's a too literal artistic expression. Because Kwani Bola, there are players who are seemingly fighting for it. There's a tree. It doesn't have to be that literal.
That's all you need to know, it's a cousin.
But anyway, we've got a cup, I guess, right? Eventually, because Sundowns were crowned champions without it, which is very weird, because TS Galaxy finished their season without us knowing what was Sundowns celebrating, and they finally played their game against Makesi, came away as 2-0 winners, and that's the cup they got. Jay, when we look back at their campaign, right? Pirates pushed them close, but for most parts of this year, at least, it was almost clear that Sundowns were going to go on to win the title. When you look back at their entire campaign with both Ukadoso and Mangoba and how the season played out, how do you conclude Sundowns' run to the title?
What a brilliant season, right? It's a record-breaking season, and it feels as if every season we're talking about that.
Yeah.
where Sundowns are concerned. 73 points matches the total from last season, but with 2 games outstanding. So, and on the run they're on, you would have put money on Sundowns going to 79, right? If there were 2 more games. 65 goals as well is 25 goals more than Orlando Pirates in second place. Ribeiro and Ikram Reyners by themselves have a combined 30 goals, Chuck, and that is more than all but 3 other teams in the PSL. And then they still have the miserly defense of only conceding 13 goals this season. Then there's also like the 24 wins, which is more than even in the era where PSL season was 34 games long. You've never had a team get to 24 wins before, and this is what happened. 24 wins in 28 games spells absolute domination. Like, Sundowns absolutely wrecked the league this season, and it wasn't looking like that for the longest time because, as you said, Pirates were mathematically, maybe at least for the majority of the second half of the season, were still in with a shout, right? But then when you have a Pirates go 18 points behind or 12 behind, even with games in hand, it's like it's going to be too much to make up because games in hand does not equal points in the bag, right? But in actual fact, yeah, Sundowns picked up from where they left off last season. And my biggest takeaway, Chuck, is that the institution that is Mamelodi Sundowns is greater than anything else that is affiliated with Sundowns. And by that, I mean specifically players or coaches. Players and coaches can come and go in Sundowns. Now, more than ever, I am fully certain of that because you think about this unprecedented period of success. It starts with Pitso Mosimane, right?
Yeah. Who
Who also then wins Sundowns' first Champions League. And you wonder, when Pitso leaves, is that going to cause instability? Is that going to be the occasion for the rest of the PSL to catch up? No. It isn't. And you can explain that away with there is some continuity. There are the 3 wise men, right? You have Mangoba Mngqithi, you've got Rulani Mokoena, who are his assistants, and it's like, okay, it's more of the same because they've been there. But then you do lose Rulani at some point. And then Mangoba is appointed as the coach, and then he leaves. Now, you don't have that connection to the godfather of the successful period, Pitso Mosimane. But it doesn't matter. And that's the thing. You had Eshlom Pokekan, you had a Percy Tau, you had CBD. You can go through the names who were absolutely integral to Sundowns' success 10 years ago, 8 years ago, 5 years ago. They were there. They no longer are there. You had Eshlom Pokekan, the heartbeat of the Sundowns team. Gave him a 4-year extension. The following year, Sundowns had buyer's remorse, if you want to put it that way, and offered him a role behind the scenes. And they were okay to move on from him. This season, you think about Temazwane goes down with that Achilles injury playing for Bafana. Is this coupled with the fact that they changed coaches now twice in the space of less than 6 months? Is this going to spell that? You remember when we were speaking about it, that this might be the thing that brings everybody else, because Sundowns, you've always said that Sundowns need to come back to the pack. Yeah. And is this going to cause it? It doesn't matter. Temazwane, who is the talisman at Sundowns, as I'm saying, he's out for the majority of the season. But it doesn't matter because Sundowns had already signed his replacement. They, like Lucas Ribeiro Costa, is right there. You know, you have Peter Shalulile, arguably the greatest goal scorer in PSL history. He is now somewhat on the fringes. He had a run, but Sundowns are not looking and depending on him because you've got Ikram Reyners, and again you've got Lucas Ribeiro Costa, who's doing the business. And that's the institution, Chuck. That is the administration. That is the club. Those pillars at Sundowns are concrete, and it feels as if they're Teflon. They're bulletproof to any kind of scandal. I remember last season when there was the back and forth between Rulani and Ramovic. Even when there were those reports that when Rulani and Mangoba were co-coaches, that there's some friction. Those things did not grow legs, Chuck, because Sundowns continued to win. And winning solves everything, right? And it seems as though, to me, especially after this season, that the organization, Sundowns, they've got the formula.
Yeah, man, I think that is echoed by Ronan Williams when he says, Uti, the culture of the club is that they never get tired of winning. Because what do you do after you had that season with Urulan? You go better. Like, how? And why? Because even if you don't go better, chances are you win the league anyway, right? But such is their hunger in Mamelodi Sundowns that they have the best in every position, because they figured right halfway through the season that Mangoba's not quite the best, and so they changed managers, right? And everywhere else, when you look on the pitch and the goalposts, best keeper. Toby Mvala, Nabo Libusa, maybe you can argue that they're not the best defensive combinations there, right? But on the right back, Mdao, best right back. Tebogo Mokoena, best midfielder. Ribeiro, best forward. And you're like, everyone who's the best in their class is at Sundowns, right? And you might want to argue that they threw money at it, they're killing the league or whatever, but sometimes it's just being smart with their money because everyone else can buy. You can buy anyone you want, right? We're just not buying the same quality as Sundowns, and quality does not necessarily mean money because you can go to NFT, you can go in Africa, you can go anywhere in the world, and if you've got the right player for the right price, you can compete. And Sundowns have been doing that, Jay, because you outlined the fact that Umvala has been missing, Umshishi has been missing, but there are players who step up and then say, well, I'm here. I mean, if I remember correctly, if I'm not going to muddy my memory too much, Ali didn't have the best season. But there are players who did step up, like Arenas, who came through with the goals. Shalila has been withering a bit, but there are players like Tashrik Matthews who come up and they step up and they play their roles. But Tusu Oba steps up and then they play their role. So cohesiveness, Jay, continuity, and that never say die spirit, I think at Sundowns is amazing. Because the chasing pack, yeah, it's quite demoralizing. I mean, I remember waking up and I saw Williams again doing a post-match interview, and they put up that graphic of the number of times Sundowns won the league, and it's just Sundowns. You're like, am I supporting the wrong team here? Because EP Pirates, it's almost like you came to this league and you chose the team that's not Sundowns. And I know it's been a matter of recent success, right? 8 times in a row, which is amazing. But Jay, when you think about the hunger of the team, when you think about Utlopi and where he is having taken over from his pops, same standard. And as you outlined as well, managers keep changing, same standard. CBD to wherever, same standard. And that's the thing about Sundowns, right? That other teams have to get to that standard. It's not a matter of they've got the players. It's a matter of they have a standard. I mean, people will tell you, even journalists, that Sundowns have got the most polite players. Whenever you come in for a press conference, what they're greeting everyone, it's a Sundown standard. And if you think about that as well, Jay, would say, how many controversies or players, there are players who do arrive drunk, but they don't do that the entire season. At some point, you cut that off. Or at some point, we saw it with Mangob as well. Umdao and Tebogo Mokoena weren't playing because he felt he was not getting that respect. And so something had to change, something had to be put back into order. And that's who Sundowns are. In contrast, right, the team that's chasing is Pirates. There's a Saling saga. How long has that dragged on? Do you have the answers to it? Anyas. Not that we know the ins and outs of the Madao and Mokoena stuff, but Ipelile. It was water over the bridge. Mangoba got them playing again, even if they leave Sundowns, but he had his players for that season. We don't have that. And those are the levels and the standards that Sundowns has kept and maintained. Also then, Jay, I think it's how they see themselves. They see themselves as a team that's going to win the league every season, a team that's going to challenge for Africa every season, and they expect that of themselves. So, man, they took the bar high. There's that run of games where they were scoring, 4 goals and 4 goals. 5 games in a row or something. What do we do when
the standards are high?
What do we do?
Absolutely high. And the gauntlet again has been thrown to the other big teams in South African football that you need to match. You need to match. We'll see if they can do it, Chuck. From the top of the log to the bottom. I don't know if it's an exciting race, but 4 teams still mathematically possible for them to go down, right?
Yeah.
And by go down, because of Royal LM, of course, to go down into the playoffs. But there's an opportunity that they might not come back from the playoffs. But Chuck, the 4 teams are staring 15th in the face. There will be Cape Town City, there will be SuperSport United, there will be Makesi as well as Golden Arrows. And I want to ask you, right, in terms of these 4 teams, which one of these teams or which of these teams do you think we would not lose much if they went down? Or which of the teams would you prefer to see staying up?
Definitely has to be SuperSport, because they're previous league winners. They've got the history, they've got the legacy, and they parted ways with Gavin Hunt as well, which I think was that separation where you're like, SuperSport without Gavin Hunt or Gavin Hunt without a team in the PSL, that's foreign to us in terms of what we know the PSL to be. And we've lost already Amavets, we've lost Abo Siwelele. You don't just take out the SuperSport like that, so they better not drop, because I think that's the biggest loss, right? Makesi, they came in, Matuli Kalinkar, they can go back down, like no harm, no foul. I mean, they had their run, it's great.
Because,
I feel
Jack, you are unfamiliar with Makesi in the way that you are familiar with SuperSport. Do they not deserve a chance for you to be like, okay, Makesi have been around for a while, like they're part and parcel of the PSL fabric. Now they can stay.
Nah, it's only been 1 season. I think with teams like Cape Town City and Stellies, they've come in and they've made a noise, and you're like, okay, let's see what you've got, right? had they gone up and went down straight away, then I have no ties. Teams like Abu Tax, no ties. They came in and they left. Dala, or actually Tax stayed for a couple of seasons. But what I'm saying is that if they were to come in and go out down immediately, But if you come, then you build a legacy and you win things like Cape Town City won. Is it MTN8 that they won? I think they won that. Yeah, that's what they won. Staley's won the Carling Cup knockout, what it was called back in the time, and they're challenging, right? So if you come in, you make a noise, we get to know your players, we get to know your manager, we get to know your fan base, we get to be familiar with you guys. Great, but make it has been only one season, and they've got a cup to go with. So if they went down, how many cup because they've been there, done that. Sissy Sharp will come back better, but I think they're not going down, Jay. And I think the second on my list in terms of people that I would not want to go down is Cape Town City, because they've punched above their weight for the longest time. They've attracted the big names. They play in Cape Town City as well. They're a team in Cape Town, which you want to have more people coming to watch football in Cape Town, right? Whereas Arrows, Amazulu, Durban City is going to come up apparently. Maybe, we don't know.
There are a lot of KZN teams.
Yeah, but there are options to pick up there. So if you're not serious, you can get the chop. But to finally answer you, Jay, I actually do not want to see SuperSport go down. You know what?
I know why you're saying that, and I had the same feeling about SuperSport, because if SuperSport go down, in actual fact, even if they stay up, right? The news headlines we've had reported is that they are going to be sold, and that's going to be the return of Bloemfontein Celtic, which is convoluted in South African football, because yes, we want to see the return of Bloemfontein Celtic, but at the expense of a SuperSport United, because the thing with these clubs, when they sell these statuses, their histories are expunged, right? So whether it's selling or it's them just disappearing through the leagues and ultimately falling off the face of the planet, if SuperSport do end up not being in the PSL, that means that in terms of PSL champions, previous PSL champions, only Sundowns, Kaizer Chiefs, and Orlando Pirates, who are obviously the obvious big three, would be the remaining teams who have won a PSL trophy before, and not just remaining in terms of in the PSL, the top division, but in existence. Because Man and Rangers are gone, Santos are gone, Bidvest are gone. Now you would have a SuperSport. And that's the thing that brought the variety to our league, right? And that's the thing that had you have a sense that it is competitive, even beyond the super rich or the teams that are the biggest teams with the biggest fan bases. So if they leave, it feels like the face of the PSL has changed forever. So I get what you're saying about that. Although as SuperSport are concerned, I think maybe because of Stan Matthews and his attitude that he just wants to sell players. Like, he does not seem like someone who is invested in building a team. I wouldn't be mad because of that. Because
what does he do with that money then?
Keep the team.
His sales president does what with the money? Because he must stay up. You've made the money of Tim from Kweno, from Mbule. Stay up. You've made the money of Campbell.
In the club, you know.
Yeah.
For me, it's Cape Town City though. Cape Town City, because I really do believe we need a team in Cape Town. Number one, right? And where Cape Town football is concerned at the moment, Cape Town Spurs have been relegated from the NFD, and who knows what's going to eventually happen with that. So you have Cape Town City, and Cape Town City not only because we need a team in Cape Town, but because of how Cape Town City have been run, Chuck. My feeling with Cape Town City is that even before, like now, I rave about the social media presence of Orlando Pirates. I think maybe they've got the best social media team in the land, right? But before them, it was Cape Town City. Cape Town City were on the forefront of like doing the things that you see on a global scale. And they're on the forefront of trying to connect to their fans, trying to grow a fan base, which is a hard thing to do in the PSL I've experienced. And I love the ownership of John Committers. I feel like he's somebody who, no pun intended, is committed to building a PSL team and having a PSL team and trying to figure out how do we get them to maybe that level where they are, the next Men and Rangers or Santos, where on a very good season, they can win the league, right? And we've seen them like go toe-to-toe with the Sundowns, the Chiefs, and the Pirates. And we've also then heard most recently that there are plans for them to build a 5,000-seater stadium. That's a club that's committed, as I'm saying, and it's invested in being a PSL club and being run a particular way. And I think we need that in our league. And it would be quite a sad day. Also because, as I said earlier on in this episode, Chuck, that Shaquille April is my dude in the under-20s. Shaquille April plays for Cape Town City. Vitboy plays for Cape Town City. So I want to see them. You know, like that's where they are incubated, and I don't want to see them go down for all those reasons.
Okay, speaking about going down and back to the top of the league, right? But this time in England, right? Not quite the top in terms of champions, but second place Arsenal. Mikel Arteta has said that actually, look at the number of injuries that they've had and the campaign and the distractions and stuff that's happened off the pitch. You shouldn't be too worried as an Arsenal fan, right? Because any other team in those shoes, any other team with that situation wouldn't have done as well as Arsenal has. So don't let their vision get blurry, he says. So Jay, you hear those words and you think, what is an Arsenal fan? If you're hearing Mikel Arteta say these things, do you think, get a life, dude? Or do you think actually he's got a fair point?
It's hard to say, Chuck. It's hard to say because it's, 5 seasons now without any silverware. Since Mikel Arteta won the FA Cup. And as much as he might want to point to the Community Shields, I had a Manchester City fan saying that, no, City didn't go trophyless this season. They won the Community Shield. Like, no, guys. Because it's not styled as a Super Cup, like, no.
Yeah.
Like, no, Community Shield doesn't count. And Arsenal being the nearly boys and hearing that from Arteta is frustrating. At the end of last season, right, after being close to City, running them close last season, they were bullish and it sounded as if this is going to be the season. And then it petered out the way that it did with all those draws, taking leads in matches and giving them up. And even on the field, like over the weekend, they asked him about the exhilarating victory against Real Madrid. I'm like, what's the point of that? Like, okay, you beat Real Madrid in Champions League. That's it. That's it. Like, there wasn't a Champions League trophy at the end of that. So what are we talking about here? You know, and it sounds like the things that got me off of the Wenger train, where I started thinking that Arsenal are committed to mediocrity because Wenger would say that it's an achievement to finish in fourth. And on some scale, it is, right? Because you're continuously in the Champions League, you are getting Champions League money participation, but you're just there to make up the numbers, and then you are getting thrashed by what is supposed to be your peers. So what's the point? Like, is the point to just, we finished in the top four, we're in the Champions League? Because if that is who Arsenal are, and this is what I've started to probably reimagine so that I'm not hurt by the events that happen at Arsenal, that Arsenal maybe are not like an absolute giant in the sense that you think of the giants of European football. And if that is the case, if Arsenal finish second, it's a good season. If they make it to the semi-final of the Champions League, it's a good season. On that one occasion where eventually they're going to win the league again, it's going to be something really worth celebrating, right? And like, being happy about. And so a season like this where you made the same as you finished in second in spite of the injuries that you suffered, if Arsenal are a rung below the absolute big teams, that's a good season. But that's not what we are being sold like by Arsenal, not by the fans, not by the coach who's now speaking on this, because we are looking at you as a team who's able to sign players worth 100 million to be at the very top. So Yes, there's no going away from the fact that Arsenal were hampered by the injuries, but also you had the opportunity to sign a striker in January, but you decided not to, right? And these are then the results. I don't think Arsenal fans should be asked to be grateful, or rather to take on a different paradigm than one of frustration that they might have, because the season again is another one that's ended without any silverware. So I know what Mikel is saying, but I'm not completely on board with that, because as I'm saying, it plunges Arsenal back into that space where mediocrity is success, or like some modicum of success is something to be celebrated. And again, if Arsenal want to style themselves as I'm saying, just below the absolute giants, then yes, it's a good season. But that's not why all these people just supported Arsenal. When Arsenal were going head to head with United in the late 90s, early 2000s, that is the team that you still imagine that they are. Maybe they're not. That was just that period, you know, and Arsenal fans should readjust how they look at the team, and maybe they should look at it the same way that Mikel does. I just don't like it, though.
I don't agree with that statement, Jay, because for the run that he's put together, for the consistency that he's built up with his team in terms of always pushing City quite close, you want to win something at some point. You can't at some point be good and then revert to excuses. Pep says his team were rubbish, and case in point, we saw in the FA Cup that indeed they are not good enough. And so if you're going to be that good, if you're going to be second place, if you're going to be chasing titles, then you have to find a way. That's what teams who win do. They find a way. Because if you think about it, Jay, as you listed as well, he had a chance to buy a striker, but instead he's got a Calafiori. Instead he went to buy a Mourinho. Instead there's a Sterling, and you're like, are these players taking Arsenal a level up, or is it just bodies? Because when the guys who you rely on get injured, you've got just bodies. You didn't do yourself any favors, because other teams can say, well, we've lost Kevin De Bruyne, but Foden has stepped up. When Saka goes down, who's stepping up for Arsenal? Has he solved that issue? If like we said, there's Saliba and Gabriel. Gabriel went down. What's the issue? What's the solution to the issue? Kivior was all right, but he's not quite the substitute. So you want to have strength in every department, and I don't think he's equipped himself with that. There was a season where Gabriel, Saka, and I don't know who's the Odegaard, and who else had hit Martinelli had double digit goals. Great. But who's your striker? Who are you going to put the burden on in terms of this guy's going to get me the goals that I need to get me close? Then the other guys will give the extra goals to get us over the top. He didn't do that. So I think his assessment of the team and where they are and how much more they need to then eclipse his City or keep up with the other teams in the Champions League to get deeper than what he's done thus far, because it's quarterfinals in the last 4 seasons. This is the best run in the quarterfinals. I think he hasn't quite assessed that very well. I don't think he's provided the right solutions. So yes, he's had injuries. Yes, he's found himself in an unfortunate situation. But had you prepared better, had you put your team on a higher level, then you don't have to say these speeches because you're in the Champions League final, maybe. Because how close were you to PSG? Close enough. But if you had a striker, if you had someone better than maybe, can we say Declan Rice because he performed against Real Madrid? I don't know. But if you have someone better than Martinelli, because Saka came back, right, and he was great to have. But if you address those options, you're like, okay, I don't have, because you're looking to Trossard to change the game. And Trossard has been a game winner for Brighton. He was the first thing that came to Arsenal. He stopped being that. What's your response to that? Because players have come, some of them have blossomed, some of them have held the standard, some of them have hit a poor run, and there hasn't been any change because you're still looking for, okay, he hasn't played Jorginho, but why is Jorginho still in the squad? Why did you even chase Sterling to begin with? You still have a Zinchenko. I don't know if Zinchenko is still good enough, but Timber has been an upgrade. Those are the right moves, right? So I'm just thinking to myself that when he had the chance to do the right thing, I don't think he's acted in the best way. So he's got a point, but not for Arsenal. If you're any other manager, you can make these statements, not for Arsenal, not now.
Yeah, Chuck, next season, no excuses. Because you imagine that reports tell us that Zubimendi is coming to Arsenal, and that should be an upgrade on Thomas Partey. Same thing in terms of the passing and controlling of matches, but should be better in duels and defensively. And then we presume as well Arsenal are gonna go sign a striker. So if you then reinforce in those areas, and you don't imagine you'll have the same kind of injury bug hit the team next season, but there are no excuses come next season. Another team who have gone trophyless this season, regardless of the fact that they did win the Community Shield at the start of the season, Manchester City, which is something that we have not been able to say for a very long time.
And it's good to say that. Yes. It's so good to say that.
Lost to Crystal Palace. Crystal Palace in the 119-year history, their first piece of silverware, Chuck, and congratulations to the Eagles, right? But Chuck, when Man City are concerned, and to not to go away from Crystal Palace, and we'll shout them out as well. But when Man City are concerned, is this the start of the end, or do you think they bounce back immediately next season?
I mean, I look at the team, right, and I expect better because Mamu's just tearing it up in the Bundesliga, right? And we know what happens sometimes. The Bundesliga to Premier doesn't quite work out. We know those things happen.
Why did he take the penalty?
I was getting to that point too, which is, okay, so Haaland is a designated penalty taker. It's saved. So what I'm trying to get at, Jay, is that a lot of things are changing. A lot of un-City-like things are happening because Slovenia isn't quite shown. So is Doku. So is Grealish not playing. And I was saying this from the beginning of the season, and I'm still saying it now. I don't get sometimes the omission of Foden. Yeah, it hasn't been amazing, but who has in a City shirt? And sometimes he is your ace in your pack in terms of he's getting you answers, he's going to give you goals. Beginning of the end, it's good to see this, but I don't know if it's the beginning of the end because they still have good players. They still have Pep Guardiola at the head. They still got that money. There's talks with they might get the Florian Wirtz. So you hope, if you're a Manchester United fan like me, that it's a Bundesliga thing. When they come to the Prem, they fizzle out somehow. But yeah, I don't think it'd be wise to write them off so soon. It's been one long campaign. I know this season is a tester in terms of where you are, who you are, and they feel that, right? But so did Liverpool on so many accounts and so many occasions when they were chasing City. But here they are, and they've come up because of what you know Liverpool to be in terms of their quality and their standards. I think it'll be foolish for us to write them off. If they lose Pep Guardiola and if they lose Kevin De Bruyne plus 2 other talents, then you're like, okay, maybe not. But for as long as you've got Haaland, who's terrorizing defenders, if he's fit, he's going to be a handful. For as long as, and I think they've got, I don't know who's their sixth that they signed. Lopez. I forgot.
I wanted to ask, is it Alcaraz? It's Alcaraz or Alvarez. One of those two.
Or not helping. But I think for me, when Pep is letting go of players like Ferran Torres, Abo Alvarez, it's because he's got more in the tank. But now he's brought in players that they're not quite shining. So I don't know, Jay. It might just be, but I don't want to be too quick to say that. But I think it's one of those seasons, Jay, where at some point there's an anomaly, right? Because Newcastle for the first time, not for the first time, but in a long time, they won the Carabao Cup. Crystal Palace for the first time, they win the FA Cup. So maybe it's a blip in the season. If you're as good as Pep Guardiola, at some point you must hit a rut. At some point, it's only normal, right? And maybe he then becomes what Jose Mourinho is. I don't know, because you can't be a great manager you can be a great team for a long time, but you can't be a great manager for a long time. At some point, something happens to you in terms of the game has moved, or you see the game differently to what's actually happening. But I hope so.
That didn't happen to Sir Alex. He literally went out.
That's why it's the best ever.
Yeah. How do I know?
But Jay, okay, he left at the top, right? But I think had he continued 3 more seasons, does he win 3 more times with Pep having then found his feet, with the other managers also having found their groove?
We don't know.
Don't know. Yeah,
unfortunately, we don't know, right?
I think they would have caught up.
Titles in 20 seasons, and where you've seen Arsenal we've seen Blackburn in the one season be a challenger. You've seen of Newcastle under Kevin Keegan. You've seen of like Arsenal and Arsene Wenger, and then like Abramovich era happened, Chelsea go back to back, and then you respond by like a treble of Premier League titles, and then you see the Aguero breaking your hearts. Like, is that gonna break the spirit of the team? Nope. You go get RVP and you win it again. So the suggestion from his career is that like he was that. That's why he is. It's either him or it's Pep, in my opinion, who is the GOAT, right?
Yeah.
And Pep is about to get the opportunity to prove that he's like Sir Alex, that whatever adversity he comes across, he rises to it, and it's back to factory settings where they just continue winning. But I was gonna say, but Pep has all the money. Sir Alex also had all the money at Manchester United.
That's
but
true.
Yeah, Chuck, I think they're gonna be right back next season because of the fact that they do have the greatest mind in football history, and they have deep pockets. And the suggestion from them spending 100 million in January and now looking to like buy Florian Wirtz, who you think is gonna cost over 100 million himself, and then maybe Reinders as well. They play with different rules, man. Like they play with different rules because
when are these fines and these things coming into effect?
So that was decided, right? We're just waiting to hear the outcome. And with the way that Manchester City are moving, it suggests to you that there are no repercussions that are coming their way. I was asked this question, like continuously. The conversation is, who are Arsenal going to sign in terms of a striker, you know? And when the conversation swings back to Alexander Isak, I always say we don't have enough money for that. Because if you're going to sign Zubimendi for 60 million and maybe you make another signing somewhere else, and if Isak, even if you weren't signing Isak, even if you weren't signing Zubimendi rather, and Isak costs like 120, 150 million, my feeling is that Arsenal cannot pay that kind of money. And yet, if the conversation was around City, it feels as though that they can and they would. And it's like, yes, I know that official revenue numbers say that they are bringing in more than anybody else in England, but still, right? You just spent all that money in January. And because this team, there needs to be a clear out and there needs to be a quote unquote rebuild that happens at Man City, like there's going to be a whole host of players of quality that are coming into the team. And their books will suggest that they are allowed to do that. And as a result, Chuck, because they are going to go sign who they want to sign, and because it's still Pep Guardiola, and I think it's still Pep Guardiola in the sense that he is Pep Guardiola, right? The GOAT manager. I think this is an anomaly, and next season they're right back to the standards that we know them to have showcased before.
Standards, Jay. And the standard hasn't been broken, or at least one player's way better than the other one, right? Carlos Alcaraz, whenever he meets Sinner, chances are he wins that game. And that was the case when they met as well.
Told you. I told you.
Then I said,
But
because
go
it's,
ahead,
it's a bit
go ahead.
it's a bit rusty. It's Wimbledon, because the clay is Alcaraz's surface. Wimbledon will be back to his best. The question is, Shay, does Sinner at some point in his career, because he's world number one, right? Or he was, maybe he dropped in the rank.
He is.
Still is, né? Because
Comfortably so still.
even with the time missed. Okay, world number one, but with not too many wins under the belt when it comes to facing his main rival, Carlos Alcaraz, right? Because they grabbed two Grand Slams apiece last season, but the main foe, as we know, mano a mano, it's Sinner versus Alcaraz. Do you think at some point, because he's world number one, he's got the accolades, Sinner has to then beat Alcaraz and then establish himself as the better player? Because at this point in time, it's still not clear. Must he do that? Is that a must in his career?
You've heard me quote this before, and I'm going to quote you this again. The nature boy, Ric Flair. Woo! What does he have to say? He says, to be the man, you've got to beat the man. Mm-hmm. I don't care that Sinner has that world number one title next to him. And that's not to poo-poo that achievement, right? Because he was consistent. He showed up, he was consistent in the tournaments he entered. He won those tournaments and he won his 2 Grand Slams. But he ain't quite the man in my eyes. Because, and I saw in that Italian Open final, yes, they were trading blows in the first set that went to a tiebreak. And the match wasn't all that much exciting because it was 4 or 5 shot rallies. Mm-hmm. And I suppose when I see 2 greats on the court, especially on the clay, I expect to be sitting down for hours on end. I want to see Djokovic and Nadal and what they used to showcase, even though some people found that to be boring. It's exciting in its own way, but yeah, those 2 boys, Sinner and Alcaraz, they're very quick to pull the trigger. But Chuck, yes, he's been out for 3 months, and he had scheduled himself to play Hamburg the following week. As a contingency if he didn't go deep in the Italian Open, but he pulled out of that because he did go deep in the Italian Open. So you have to consider the fact that there is rustiness after 3 months off the court. And Alcaraz did point that out at the end of the match, and he congratulated him on keeping himself in the kind of shape to be able to make the final. But even if he was there these last 3 months, I think the result would have been the same, because I saw the same result all through last year. He goes 73-6, I believe, or 78-6 his record was last year, which is scintillating, right? And he wins the 2 slams, and then he went on to defend his Australian this year. But when he did meet Alcaraz, every single time, all 3 times, half of those 6 losses came against Alcaraz. And once again, and I told you when we were talking about the Australian Open, this is that I told you that I was speaking about that. He has Djokovic to thank, because in Djokovic's last great performance as Novak Djokovic, because I don't think we're going to see Djoko win another slam, he knocked out Alcaraz in the Australian Open in the quarterfinals. So Sinner didn't have the opportunity to play Alcaraz, right? And here, as in the previous tournaments, when there's no place to hide, when somebody else is not doing your dirty business for you and you have to meet Alcaraz, what happens? Alcaraz invariably comes out on top. And for me, that is something Sinner has to solve. Mind you, Sinner didn't play afraid. He doesn't play afraid against Alcaraz. I just think that Alcaraz is the better player. But that is still a question, right? And Sinner is right there, 3 slams to the 4 of Alcaraz. But Alcaraz, Chuck, when he does get to the final, and that's the thing, that he has to work himself to the point where he's in that position. Between Grand Slams and Masters 1000s, he's made 12 finals. He's 11-1 in those big finals. That's unheard of. That is absolutely unheard of. And so, as a result, because of all those things, that for me is still the man, Carlos Alcaraz. And French Open is coming up. You said maybe you might have better luck at Wimbledon. Do you know who the best cross-court player is in the world right now? It is the same guy, Carlos Alcaraz. So, unless something happens along the way, as I'm saying, you're going to have to go and solve that problem yourself. And for me, to absolutely cement the credential that not only are you world number one, but the best in the world, and in the ongoing battle for the best of the generation, you got to do it against Alcaraz.
I mean, I guess the conversation is, can the 2 greats coexist? And you're firmly on the answer of no. You have to be the better one. You can't say, yeah, but I'm also good as well, unless you topple the man at the top, right? And I mean, Messi never answered the question, can he do it on a rainy night in Stoke? He never did, right? But he was winning La Ligas.
By the way, I actually have refutable proof. I have refutable proof that Ronaldo actually also never did it on a cold night in Stoke.
You were looking at stats, né? Or did you watch the games?
Chuck,
It's more than stats.
Because there was no recollection of what did he actually do on a cold night in Stoke. And I'm gonna pull that up. This is on video. I'm gonna pull that up. We're gonna make a video where I put that across in terms of the night Ronaldo went to Stoke and it was cold. What happened? Go ahead.
But I was gonna say, then he went on to win the World Cup, and I was like, he's the best. Never did it on a cold night in Stoke. And my point is this, Jay, that does he have to slay this dragon for as long as he's getting? Imagine he gets to 20 Grand Slams. That's amazing. That's a great challenge. Imagine he beats the next best stars of that generation. Your Zverevs, he deals away with that. Your Medvedevs, he beats those guys. That should be a great career. Imagine they all retire and he's got more Grand Slams than Alcaraz. Shouldn't that suggest he had a better career? Maybe not. It would, right?
It would suggest that. I just wouldn't believe the suggestion.
But I think, Jay, ultimately I do agree with you that you must get that monkey off your back. It can't be every time this man shows up, you leave. That's what Cat Williams says. That, have you seen me and Kevin Hart in the same room? Every time I'm there, he leaves. Every time I know he's there, I'm not there. It can't be that. You have to be in the same room and say, I'm here, what now? Because it's a mano sport.
Yes.
You can't be the coach because he's sitting up in the stands. It can't be your team.
Teammates.
It's
the
just you.
It's just you.
And sometimes you have to figure it out. You have to put the fear in him. You have to put the doubt in him. You have to say, okay, when it comes to, yes, I know you're defending Roland Garros champion, but you're playing against me now. It must sound like that. It must feel like that. You're playing against me, world number one. You're playing against me, defending Australian Open winner. You're playing against me, the next best guy, and I'm going to prove that I'm number one. Okay, you might be the best at Wimbledon, but you're playing against me. But every time he has to say that, never goes his way. And so, yeah, I think his voice will get smaller and smaller because however bad Alcaraz is playing, because he was then said to be criticized to be, you're always doing these shoots, you're always playing these games in Saudi Arabia, you're not winning tournaments. But put City in front of him. He does business. It can't be that way, Jay. It can't be great, but this is your great Achilles heel, especially after meeting him so often. I wonder if it was a matter of Gucci, every time he plays Angazi in a tournament that happens once every 4 years, he loses that. That's great, but every year, every couple of months there's a Grand Slam, there's that guy in your way. What do? He has to answer that question at least 4 times, unless someone does him a favor. He has to answer that question 4 times in a year. Never mind the other ATP 500 tournaments and the thousands and whatnot. 4 times a year at least in the Grand Slams, you have to answer that question. So you can't keep saying, no, I'm not ready.
Chuck, the narrative is the narrative, right? It's not like, there was once a time where Roger Federer had a losing record against David Nalbandian. But it's David Nalbandian, right? It's not Rafa Nadal. Similarly, you have Ostapenko now, who has the absolute wood over Swiatek, right?
Yeah.
But the question is not going to be who's the greater player, right? It's just that particular matchup. But when it's your peer in the conversation of who is better, like who is greater, whether all time or like in the generation, it was important for Sampras, even though he had like 14 slams to Agassi's 8. He had a winning record against Agassi, you know, and it's why ultimately Federer comes in third of like the 3 GOATs. That yes, there's also the fact that he has lesser of the slams between him, Nadal and Djokovic, but he's got losing records against those 2, you know. You wanna take it to other sports. What you're saying is like very important, like the mano a mano. We shouldn't have wondered, like at the end of their careers, is it Pacquiao or is it Mayweather? And even though it came at a time where we all agree that it was maybe a bit too late, but Mayweather has that over Pacquiao. You know, Usain Bolt, he went up against those other guys. Yeah, you might have Safa Powell having the most times sub 10. But it doesn't matter because, like, in the grandest of stage, mano a mano with the other guy right there across you, he beat you. You know, so there's no question. So there will be questions if you don't solve it. Like, and you might not even need to have like an absolute winning record against him, but you have to be close. You can't be that. Again, you're losing only 6 matches in a year, and half of those are to one guy. And the one time you face him in the Grand Slam, he beats you, and he goes on to win that Grand Slam title. And when you've won Grand Slam titles, you've never faced him before. And as a result, you've never beaten him before. So you have to answer the call. We continue answering the call right here on 2UPFRONT every single week. Thank you for joining us for this particular episode. If you are new here or you're returning, if you've not yet done so, please subscribe to the channel. Please like the videos. Please comment on them. Please share it far and wide. And continue the conversation with us even on our social media pages. You can find us across all social media platforms. It is at 2UPFRONT Pod. I am at G_Mzulu. Chuck is at Chuck2. 2 Up. From Jay, I'm outie.
I'm not quite a fan of the trophy, of the Betway Premiership trophy, but the rallying cry, like we said to Sinner, to everyone in the Premier League, we can't keep getting battered by Sundowns. Someone, somewhere, do something.